What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for Sports. I'm going to go ahead and go ahead with this series that was requested by one of my subscribers, the 10 most NBA ready players in the history of the sport. All right, just from my perspective. And let me preface this once again by saying this is just my opinion. People who are listening to this video will have their own top 10 lists or what have you. And this is just my opinion. It was requested by a subscriber of mine. So, just do a brief recap. At number 10, I had the Big E, Elvin Hayes. At number 9, I had Wes Unseld. So, at number 8, I have Tim Duncan, the big fundamental. And Tim Duncan, of course, is one of the greatest players in the history of the game. He is the consensus GOAT at power forward, even though some of those years he was actually playing the center position, especially after Dave Robinson retired back in 2003. But still, Tim Duncan appeared in 6 NBA Finals, only losing one Finals, that being the 2013 NBA Finals, which still went to Game 7 that particular year. But other than that, he won every other final. He won 5 NBA championships in his career. And you can make an argument that he's actually one of the most underrated players still. When people think of the GOATs, his name doesn't come up that frequently. It's usually other players that come up. Mike, Wilt, to a lesser extent now, but even Bill Russell, Kobe, LeBron, guys like that come up. Tim Duncan, to me at least, was one of the most NBA-ready players in the history of the sport. Now, he took to the game relatively late, but he took to it like a fish out of water. And even though he had a shaky start as a college player, he struggled a bit at first, but he got the hang of it. And, his first year was not impressive. It was solid, but impressive. He averaged his freshman year at Wake Forest 9.8 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 3.8 blocks per contest. By his second year, his sophomore year, he improved dramatically, averaging 16.8 points, 12.5 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 4.2 blocks per game. And his shooting percentage increased from 54% to 58%. His junior year, his scoring average increased from 16.8 to 19.1 points per game, going along with 12.3 rebounds, 2.9 assists, 3.8 blocks on 57% shooting. And during his senior year in college, he was the consensus best player in college, averaging 20.3 points per game, actually 20.8 points per game, 14.7 rebounds, 3.2 assists, 3.3 blocks on 61% shooting from the floor. As early as 1995, there was speculation that he was going to go pro, but he did not. All right, he vowed by his second year in college that he was going to play all 4 years, even though there was speculation that he was just saying it and that he was going to go pro, but he never did until he graduated. And he's one of the last notable players to actually play all 4 years in college, like one of the last notable stars to do so. When you look at his collegiate career, I mean, it's just phenomenal. He was the consensus National College Player of the Year in 1997, two-time consensus first team All-American, 1996, 1997. The Chip Hilton Player of the Year, 1997. He was the NCAA rebounding leader in 1997. Three-time Defensive Player of the Year, 95, 96, and 97. Two-time ACC Player of the Year, 1996-97. Three times first team All ACC, 1995, 96, and 97. Of course, his number 21 is retired by the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. And when he retired, well, I shouldn't say retired, but when he completed his collegiate career in 1997, he was the all-time leading shot blocker in ACC history with 481 blocks. And he was also, when he retired, the all-time leading rebounder in NCAA history in the post-73 era. But he's since been surpassed by Kenneth Faried. So he's one of the great collegiate players of all times. Even if his overall career in college, from a statistical standpoint, wasn't as impressive, he still is one of the great college players of all times. But his impact with the San Antonio Spurs and his impact in the NBA and the respect that he instantly got from his peers is nearly unprecedented. The year before he got to the NBA, David Robinson was hurt. He got injured. And that's the year I think Dominique Wilkins signed with the Spurs. And, he looked pretty good coming off the bench, but they were a horrible team that year. They went only 20-62. Only went 20-62. But it was a blessing in disguise because that horrible record gave them a chance at securing the rights of Tim Duncan. And that happened. And they were in a real good position to be a great team by next year. David Robinson was back, but he was not the same player. That leg injury that he suffered completely altered him. I don't say completely, but it took away a lot of his speed and athleticism. And anyway, even without that, David Robinson was getting older anyway. He was past the age of 30. So he needed a little bit more help now. And he had never really had, David Robinson, when you think about it, he never really had a lot of offensive help on that team. But his prayers were answered with Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan, in his rookie year, averaged 21 points, 12 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 2.5 blocks, 55% shooting from the floor, and 66% from the foul line. And Tim Duncan, more than just the numbers, Tim Duncan more than showed that he was NBA ready. He was ready. He wasn't intimidated by other big men. Sometimes a lot of these guys would make rookie mistakes. Sometimes there's an adjustment period where the speed of the NBA game kind of bewilders them or whatever. He didn't really have any of that. Man. Now, it took him and Dave Robinson a little bit of time to make some adjustments to playing with one another. But by the midseason, they were probably the best team in basketball. Now, I know that seems blasphemous to say because they were about the Chicago Bulls. But you got to remember the Bulls were without Scottie Pippen for half the season. So they really were a team that got better toward the latter part of the season. So for the middle part of the season, I think the Spurs were arguably the best team in the NBA. What happened was, got hurt. Sean Elliott. Sean Elliott got hurt down the stretch, and he wasn't available in the playoffs. But they still finished with a 56-26 record, which was a 36-game improvement over the year prior. One of the greatest turnarounds in the history of basketball, even though a lot of it was because David Robinson came back. And I think they got to the second round of the playoffs before being eliminated. But, of course, the very next year, Tim Duncan led, and I mean led because he was the featured player by the second season. He led the Spurs to their first ever NBA championship. And they became the first team, and so far, they're still the only team of the old ABA to win an NBA championship. So yeah, to me, man, Tim Duncan is one of the most NBA ready players that we saw, and we saw how he dominated the NBA. Wasn't flashy. Some people called him boring, but I love watching him play because he was a great, great basketball player. So tell me what you guys think.